One of the most common complaints about muscle is that it's expensive. You'll often hear this framed as a downside. Muscle burns calories at rest. Muscle raises daily energy needs. Muscle makes you have to eat more. Implicitly, muscle is treated like overhead, something the body has to pay for without getting much in return. But that framing has the situation exactly backward. Muscle is metabolically expensive because it is metabolically useful. Muscle isn't just tissue you move with during workouts. It's active tissue that changes how your body functions all day long, even during the many hours when you're not exercising at all. Muscle allows you to lift, carry, stabilize, and react. But its most important work often happens quietly, in the background, without you noticing it. After you eat, nutrients have to go somewhere. Glucose needs to be cleared from the bloodstream. Amino-acids need to be incorporated into tissue or stored for later use. Energy needs to be handled without large spikes and crashes. Muscle helps solve all of those problems. It is one of the primary places the body disposes of glucose after meals. When muscle mass is adequate, blood sugar regulation is easier. When muscle mass declines, glucose has fewer places to go, and the burden shifts to systems that are less well suited to handle it. Muscle also plays another critical role. It acts as a reserve. During illness, injury, surgery, or major physiological stress, the body needs amino acids to maintain essential systems and repair damaged tissue. If dietary intake drops during those periods, the body draws from internal reserves, and muscle is one of the main reserves it relies on. That's not a design flaw, it's a survival feature, but it comes with consequences. When muscle mass is low, recovery takes longer. Strength drops faster. Every stress costs more than it should. So yes, muscle costs energy, but that cost buys metabolic capacity, recovery ability, and resilience. Qualities that become more important, not less, as life gets more demanding. Another way to understand this is to think about how the body behaves when resources are limited. The body is constantly making decisions about what tissue it can afford to keep. Those decisions are not based on aesthetics or goals. They're based on survival and energy balance. Muscle is one of the most expensive tissues in the body to maintain. It requires continuous protein turnover, continuous repair, and a steady energy supply. When energy intake is sufficient and protein intake is consistent, that expense is manageable. But when energy intake is low, protein intake is inconsistent, or recovery demands are high, the body looks for ways to reduce costs. It does not start by shutting down essential organs. It does not start by compromising brain function. It starts by reducing optional, expensive tissue. And muscle is often the first place those reductions happen. That doesn't mean the body is malfunctioning. It means it's adapting logically to the inputs it's given. From the body's perspective, maintaining muscle only makes sense if that muscle is being used and supported. When either of those signals weakens, muscle becomes negotiable. This is why muscle loss can happen even in people who feel generally healthy, and even in people who stay active. If training signals are inconsistent, or if nutrition doesn't match demand, the body slowly adjusts downward. The adjustment is not dramatic. There is no sudden failure. Strength declines slightly, recovery takes a little longer. Tasks feel a bit harder than they used to. Over time, those small changes add up. And because they happen gradually, people rarely connect them to muscle loss or nutrition. They assume it's age, stress, or motivation, when in reality, it's often a mismatch between what the body is being asked to do and what it's being given to work with. This is where confusion often sets in. If muscle burns more calories, people assume it should automatically make them leaner. When that doesn't happen, they conclude that muscle is inefficient or overrated. But energy demand is only one part of the system. Appetite, food environment, sleep, stress, and behavior all play major roles. What muscle actually does is raise the baseline amount of work your body is capable of doing. A body with more muscle is like a larger engine. It burns more fuel at idle, but it also produces more power and handles load more reliably. The opposite is true as well. When muscle is lost, resting energy expenditure tends to fall. that is often described as efficiency. In reality, it means the body is doing less work. A smaller engine burns less fuel, but it also handles less stress and has less capacity when demands increase. This is why weight loss can look successful on the scale while health quietly worsens underneath. If weight loss includes muscle, metabolic capacity declines. Baseline calorie needs drop. Strength falls. Daily life becomes more effortful, not easier. Now add aging to the picture. Muscle becomes harder to maintain over time. Recovery slows. Periods of inactivity, illness, travel, injury lead to faster losses than they did earlier in life. That's why muscle loss often feels like it appears suddenly later on. It doesn't. For many people, it begins earlier and accumulates quietly over years. You don't notice it all at once. You just realize that you're weaker than you expect and that fatigue shows up sooner. Because the change is gradual, people normalize it. They assume it's inevitable. This is where protein matters. Protein isn't fuel, it's material. Muscle cannot be maintained without sufficient protein to support ongoing repair and turnover. When protein intake is too low, the body adapts by reducing muscle mass to match what it can support. Not dramatically, gradually, quietly. This is where the idea that muscle is expensive does real damage. People interpret higher energy and protein needs as a problem to avoid. They eat less. They keep protein moderate. They prioritize leanness over support. And over time, they trade capability for convenience. A simple way to think about this is that muscle is an asset that charges a maintenance fee. The fee is energy and protein. If you pay the fee, you keep the asset. If you don't, the body lets it go. And when muscle is gone, you don't just lose tissue. You lose strength. You lose reserve. You lose resilience. This episode isn't arguing that everyone should pursue maximum muscle. It's about correcting the trade-off. Muscle costs energy, and that cost buys function, stability, and independence. In the next episode, we'll address one of the main reasons people avoid paying that cost in the first place. The fear that higher protein intake is dangerous. For now, the takeaway is simple. Muscle is expensive because it does important work. Losing it isn't efficiency, it's decline. This is protein truth.